I like how when we do the video, it's like everybody just kind of pops in out of nowhere, which is nice. Anyway, and we're back. Another exciting author roundtable episode of the Mando Method Podcast. I am your co-host and totally high on coffee right now, Armand Rosamilia.
And I'm the other co-host and not really high on anything yet, Chuck Buda.
Nice. No,
Just kidding,
I figured no alcohol. We have children's authors. I didn't want to pull out the alcohol like we sometimes will do.
Yeah, no whiskey today. I have water. That's it.
I actually have whiskey, but this is this is backstage. This is the Darius Rucker peach mint whiskey.
Oh yeah, I gotta get that.
It is freaking delicious. I literally have it on my desk now because I have a problem, I guess.
You know what else is delicious?
What?
Reaper's Brew coffee. ReapersBrew.com. Check them out. Of course, they're still waiting for their new shipment of coffee, but they still have plenty of t-shirts, mugs. As you can see, some of the mugs lined up behind Armand on his shelf. And everything else that they have, don't forget to use the coupon code MANDO, M-A-N-D-O, at checkout and get 10% off of new orders plus a free gift. And thank you to the folks at ReapersBrew.com for supporting the show.
Yes, definitely. All right, let's get into the excitement here. Let's have our guests introduce themselves. We'll start with Diann. Introduce yourselves. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Sure, I'll be happy to. Hello, everyone, and so glad you're with us on the show tonight. I am a children's author, but I do have one young adult historical fiction out, and that one's based on my grandma, and it's a pretty exciting story. So children's books are predominantly what I write, and my purpose is to embrace imagination, and my stories are about kindness, love, peace, and to love yourself just the way you are. And that wraps it up.
Okay, I'm Jane Warren. Jane Baird Warren is my writing name. And I think Diann and I have a lot in common because I also push for kindness, and that's the theme of what I'm writing about. My first book is with Scholastic. It's called How to Be a Goldfish, and kindness factors big in it. I also think, I read your bio, Diann, we both have lived in Dubai.
Oh,
so something we should connect over sometime.
Definitely.
I'm Canadian. I'm currently in St. Augustine, Florida, where I spend part of my year, and enjoying it. Great to be in America again, and that's it.
Wow.
Wonderful. Dubai. Who knew we would connect there?
I know. That was exciting for me to read that. When I saw the kindness in your press release and then the Dubai thing, I thought, okay, I got to talk to this gal.
Yeah. I lived there 14 years, so.
Oh, I'm not that long.
So.
Not in any of those high rises, was it? Or
we lived in a lot of the a couple of times in the villages with the locals, but then we ended up at the Marriott on the 48th floor. It was pretty awesome. We could
pretty swank.
Yeah, it was pretty swank. We had the complete view of the Gulf and some of the main, like you could see the Atlantis and some of the other highlights of Dubai just from there. And every time there was an air show, we saw, we just had people come over to our balconies and have parties, and we all sat there and watched the air shows. And every weekend, people were always skydiving, and so we'd have skydiving watch parties. It was pretty cool.
That's great. I wasn't in a high rise. We were in a villa. You'd know this, Diann. We were in Sakim too, so you could see Burj Al
Arab. I lived there.
And all we could see from ours was watching the helicopters land on the top. The Burj is pretty cool. It was the first fancy structure there architecturally, and it's built like a sail. It's iconic. Yeah. You probably have seen it in pictures and movies.
Yeah. It is cool. Yeah, I was in Sakim too. It just shows you what a small world.
There you go.
Those high-rise buildings scare me every time I see pictures of them. They're way too tall, and this comes from somebody that lived a few miles outside of Manhattan for many years. So, but yeah, I noticed too in the bios that, and I liked what you both had in there, in terms of the kindness and be who you are, and almost like taking, not to put a label on it, but like a Christian view on the writing. And I've just started to move that way. So I started writing horror stories, so they were brutal and nasty and evil, and now I'm swinging into westerns, American westerns in the old West, and basically the themes are all around redemption and forgiveness and all that kind of stuff. More of those gentler, kinder themes,
Yeah.
And it's been a transition for me, but how do you each of you, I guess, approach that? Do you start off with like a strong thematic, I guess, jumping board to tell your story, or do you start with a story and then work in through the characters and the story as it goes? I guess what you're trying to convey.
Well, you do picture books, don't you, Diann?
Yes, I do picture
Yeah.
books.
So why don't you start? I think I approach things probably very differently because I'm doing novels.
Right. And I know that one that you announced, it's really cool. So for me, I, an idea or a theme will pop in my head, and I subconsciously just let it kind of soak in with the message I want to get across. So like Harry the Camel, I knew I wanted to write something to get back to Dubai because 14 years, beautiful experience, gorgeous people. And so then I thought, what can I do? And when I'm in the schools, this was pre-COVID, of course, no matter where you are in the world, the same thing happens. You can't come to my birthday if you aren't nice to me, and stuff like that. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to come up with a camel story, and then we're going to go from there. And in the end, Harry the Camel was all about loving yourself the way you are, because Harry wanted to be a horse, and you learn why, and you go through the trials of, in the very end, he discovers that there's nothing better than being a camel, which is what I get across to the kids, to love yourself just the way you are. So for me, the pictures are extremely important. They convey a lot of the message. I use a variety of different artists, and it's pretty exciting to watch the words come to life, because with a lot of kids, they may not be reading yet, but the pictures will tell the story, and that's really exciting. I love that.
There's an art to writing a picture book that I do not have. I often think that you have to sort of have the soul of a poet, because you have such an economy of words, 500 to 750 words to get your story across, and you count on an illustrator. I'm just completely different. So I did my master's in creative writing, and I wrote a thesis, which was terrible. I mean, looking back at the time, I thought it was really hot, but it was not good at all. The only thing that I kept from it was the setting. I loved the setting. It was a fictional town called Scotch Gully, which I drew maps of. I lived in, if I could draw, I could just draw every single house, every farmhouse. This came alive to me. So I just started to write. I had these characters, I was playing with them. And then one day I read this tweet, which was a restating of something that Nelson Mandela wrote, and I cannot quote it directly, but paraphrasing, it's, no man is born hating. You have to be taught to hate. So if you can be taught to hate, you can be taught to love. And I thought, boom, touchstone. So you have to have something that you have a takeaway for a reader when they're finished. I'm assuming this is the same for picture books. So this is the one thing I wanted them to take away. So it's a book about being an ally. And I certainly did not have this when I started. I was writing and exploring characters. I'm a plotter. I knew where I wanted it to go. I wanted it to be kind of a Parent Trap inspired book, where these two kids who didn't know they were related, didn't even know they existed, found each other, and something happened. Well, that's all fine and good, but it's a Shaggy Dog story if you just have event. Something the characters have to come alive. So you guys are all writing, you probably know Lisa Cron. I got right into Story Genius and all those kind of things.
Yeah,
Okay, so my characters are pretty flat, which is why my master's thesis kind of sucked. And I just, was true. And so I just just let my inner pantser go. And I thought, okay, you have to stop plotting this and just explore. And what I discovered when I let that happen was the characters did things and said things that surprised me. And I figured if they could surprise me and keep me interested, then they're probably going to keep a reader interested too. So I went with that. And I'm not sure that's going to work for every book. I think form follows function. I think you have to sort of let the book talk to you a little bit and see what it needs. But it worked really well for this one. And I'm struggling with book 2, but I typed the end yesterday. I wrote my agent and I said, okay, I'm just going to wait a month and I'm going to send it out to some more beta readers because I'm not so sure I nailed it, but feels good. Feels really
good.
Yeah. Anyway, I ran.
Congrats.
Thanks.
Yeah. So what is the marketing like for children? Because I know of quite a few, children's authors here, and most of them, the problem for them because of COVID and everything is it was print books. Most of their sales, especially picture books, ended up being print sales more than ebook or even when they did audiobooks or anything. So was that an adjustment for either of you with everything going on?
Go ahead, Diann.
Oh no, it's okay. For me, I was glad it was print book because I absolutely love print books, and so it wasn't that much of an adjustment for me. But I always like to say the marketing. I say it's quote a beast. When I started off as a teacher and I moved into training educators, and then from there, I've always was a storyteller. And so then it was time to put it to print, my stories to print. And I had no idea how difficult marketing was. So to answer your question, to me, marketing is a beast, but it's fun.
Okay, I have to come at this a little differently because Scholastic has a marketing department. So I don't know how far into the weeds you want to get, but when you sign with a publisher that's of a certain size, you get this questionnaire thrown at you like, who are you? Who do you know? What do you do? Tell us your history. And then they look at all that and then they figure out, they know where they would like the book to be. And the marketing department at most publishers, they're the ones that get it into bookstores, into libraries. The rest of it, that's changed a lot in the last few years. I mean, I remember when I first started doing writing at university, you'd go to a book launch and the book publisher, it was usually a small press in Canada, but the book publisher would host the launch. I mean, I hosted my own launch. Yeah. That's just how she goes these days. But I think you need a community. And as much as there's the ups and downs of places like Twitter, my Twitter has no politics. My Twitter is solidly writers, and I love my writing Twitter. I mean, I was just on there today saying thanks to a bookstore in North Carolina for getting me signed copies for authors. I mean, you gotta look after your friends, and you gotta look after your writing friends, and so yeah, word of mouth, a little bit organic. Trust your marketing department. I did do something interesting this time, though. I took some people who were more experienced than me's advice, and I actually hired a publicist separate, but not until I made sure that Scholastic was okay with me using a publicist and their streams didn't cross, to use Ghostbuster reference.
I love Ghostbusters.
Yeah. And I know Scholastic still does a lot of that marketing and stuff. I actually have a buddy I grew up with, Frank, who I know years ago, he used to put the Scholastic, what do you call it, together.
The book fairs.
The book fairs for the schools. And like, that was like a dream job for him. Cause like, this is what we grew up on. And I think he's on the editing side now, if I'm not mistaken. He's been there for like 20 something years. And I know from talking to him that they've done a lot. They still do a lot more than the Big Five does. I mean.
Well, and they're international, right?
Yeah.
I'm Scholastic Canada only right now, and they own the rights, so they try and sell it to. They probably won't sell it to America because it's very Canadian centric, this particular book. But they might try in the UK. They might try Australia. Right. They're all over. But yeah, they do. Yeah. They are big.
They're trying, and that's, I think, is an important thing. Me and Chuck, especially when we were both just horror authors, it's a lot of small press. It's literally one guy, in his living room who's running the press and going, hey, I'll take your book, and there's no advance and there's no marketing and there's nothing. And at times you wonder, why are we working with a publisher when I can get 70% from Amazon on a lot of these? So it's a little different.
There's a real market out there for YA and middle grade horror, if you're interested. Actually, I have a friend in Saskatchewan that wrote one of the big fives, picked it up. It's really good. It's called The Absence of Sparrows. So you can't have the gore quite so much, but you can scare the bejesus out of the kids. It's good.
And they do love it, that's for sure.
They do. But I think it's necessary, right?
Yeah.
Read about horror and it helps you meet your fears. So I think it's great.
Yeah, I think that's very good. Jane, real quick, how long are you going to be in St. Augustine?
Undetermined, probably till mid-December, then back again. We have to go to Japan in the spring, and then we'll come back afterwards, maybe in March.
All right. We do a group thing. We go to the Chinese buffet once a month, all the authors in town.
I'll let you know when I come back.
You just missed. So I think the first, like the second Tuesday in December maybe we'll all get together. But if you're still here, I'll send you a message once we get a date for it.
Well, wait, if you go to that whiskey house in St. Augustine, let me know and I'll drive down.
But will you need a drive home?
Yeah, I'll crash in my truck. It's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Sleep it off for a few days. But Jane, actually, you were mentioning before, the plotting and the pantsing, and usually, we get into that at some point with lots of authors because everybody's kind of one side or the other. But it sounds like you're kind of in the middle in that you have the basis so that you know where you're going, where you're starting, where you're going to, and the beats in between, how to get there, and then you allow the story to inform you and surprise you as you go along.
Yes.
And that's, I was a staunch plotter when I started, and then it just became not too regimented, but I found, like you said, where the characters in the story would take you in surprising places, and I allowed myself to open up and accept that, and I think the stories got better for it.
I think they have to. You can recognize when somebody is just following the Save the Cat playbook because they're moving characters around like chess pieces. The characters aren't moving themselves. So it sounds a little airy-fairy when I say I let the characters talk, but I really do think that you have to, if you don't let go a little bit, you're not going to have anything original. You're just, that's like I said, moving pieces on a chessboard. I wonder if it's the same for picture books though, because the economy and the paucity of language that you have to use. I've tried, and I'm worse at picture books than I was at my thesis. So good on you.
I am not a plotter. I come up with an idea and I just sit and I write the story and see what happens. And then from there, I clean it up. And though I will say when I did the historical fiction that, again, I just wrote and wrote and wrote. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've written so much. We're going to have to cut this in half. And then I started cleaning it up, as you always do with edits and everything. But because it was based on a real person, my grandmother, and I know that might sound boring to y'all, but she was born in 1904. And she wanted to go to college, and most girls do not go to college at that time period. So the word teenager didn't exist back then. It was the 1920s generation that helped make that happen, in case y'all didn't know. It's fascinating. And so she decided to run away to go to college. So I thought, this is an inspiring woman. It's an incredibly story of what she did. And how her daddy found her and then eventually paid for her college because she wanted it so much. And I wanted to inspire young kids that no matter what, if it's something you really want and you feel in your gut, we can make it happen. Don't necessarily run away from home. That's not good, but that's what happened in that story. And so there were moments that I actually had to do a little bit of plotting to make sure that it was seamless in the going from one chapter to the other. So, but in picture books, no. Now I know some authors who plot out their whole story before they write it, but that's not me. I wake up and all of a sudden I know the story and I sit down in this room is where the magic happens and write the story and go from there.
Now, as you're writing that, do you have the picture ideas in your head as you're doing it? Do you do sketches or do you do anything other than it's all in your head?
It's an excellent question. It's all in my head, the words, and then from there, I'm not an artist, but I have illustrated a couple of the books, but I'm really not an artist. And then from there, I'll describe to the illustrator things that I'm thinking. But as the old adage goes, the illustrator knows what they're doing. But I've been fortunate enough that they would listen to some of my ideas.
That's good.
Yeah,
Cool.
it is good. It's really fun when you can collaborate like that. I really love it. So,
Because it's that other level of telling your story. It's like making a movie.
it is.
As a screenwriter, here's my story and I have it in my head, and then you give it to a director who has his own take, and the actors all have their own take, and the editor has his own, so that story progresses so many times. Whereas as authors, we write the story and we get some feedback from beta readers, we get some feedback from editors, but it's still kind of our story because it's still in our head of what it's supposed to look like. And I guess audiobooks would be that next level because you have somebody talking through it. But for you to actually have somebody drawing out what you've written, that's got to be that cool next level.
It's so awesome. It's so awesome.
And really fortunate because in the non-independent world, you wouldn't have any say, right? So if you were sending it to, I don't know, Annick Press or some fabulous publishing house, they'd take your words and go, well, thank you very much. We'll let you know when it's done. They don't ask your input. They just let the illustrator go. So the fact that you have control and that you can actually work with your illustrator, I think that's a gift. I know I sat there with my fingers crossed thinking, okay, so what's the cover going to look like? I had no input at all. So I got lucky, but
yeah.
So I think that's great.
Thanks.
So Armand and I have talked many times on this program about like inspiration and stuff, but I've honestly never heard folks who write for young people like where the inspiration came from. So was there a book like, the little inchworm or 10 little monkeys jumping on a bed type thing, like something that from your youth that, kicked off that desire to write for young people? Or was it something that you just stumbled into? Or I guess talk about like the influences or the inspiration behind how you came into that realm.
Chuck read these books this week, by the way. That's why he's mentioning them.
I just started, so
I'll take this one. I'll start off, I do everything a little bit backwards, I think. So I started doing a master's in creative writing because I was going to write the next great literary fiction. I mean, I had this whole thing in my head, but part of the program that I was in required it's a very Canadian British-like system. You have to take 3 different disciplines. I couldn't just take writing a novel. So I chose, translation, I think, and children's writing because my mom had recently passed and she always said, you should write for children. I don't like what you're writing with short fiction. So write for children. And I thought, well, okay, I'll do that. And I kind of fell in love. I realized that a really good children's book can be read by adults. So Harry Potter, for example, is a game changer. How many adults read Harry Potter? So that was my first I didn't even think about it then, but then I started reading things like Staying Fat for Sarah Byrne and Tuck Everlasting, and I thought, these are great. They're beautiful. They're elegantly written. Philip Pullman won the Costa Book Award. Frances Hardinge, I don't know if you've read her, fantasy writer, spectacular. She's also a children's writer who won a literary prize. So I thought, okay, that's what I want to do. It's aspirational, and I don't know if I'm going to hit it every time, but I want to be able to write books that kids can take and read through, but an adult can read and enjoy as well. So I call that my Steinbeck aspiration, because he had the same sort of thing, except not for children. He said that even if you're simple, you can read my books and enjoy them. But if you're really clever, then you're going to get a lot more out of them. So that's my little pitch.
Cool.
That was beautiful. For me, my background, as I stated earlier, is an educator. And so being with young children is a natural for me. And then always telling stories. Even when I was teaching 8th graders computers, when they came into the classroom, before we got started, I wanted everyone to be a family, because we were going to break out into groups and we all needed to love each other. And I told them they had to leave all their baggage out. And so I would have some kind of story to kind of bring us all together. And now when I see some of my former students, they're like, it was your story time. Even though I was in 8th grade, I just really loved it because I knew I could work with so-and-so because of what you said. And I was like, all right, home run. But stories for me, people, behind me, let's just say, I have stories from when my mother and dad read to me when I was little, books from where, this is the story garden, this room, and it's predominantly all children's books and middle grade. And I will pull out, let's say, the book Beautiful Joe. It was written in the 1800s. The late 1800s, and it's still to this day one of my favorite books, because that book actually was they say the first book that was so powerful that it made where the first legislation to protect animals take place. And that's pretty powerful when an author can do that. And I generally make sure a lot of kids read it, though in today's world, it may not pass the librarians because of the way it was written. People spoke a little different back then. But it's a beautiful story. And that touched my heart so much. I remember to this day reading it in 5th grade and saying, I want to be able to do stories that people remember forever. And so that's kind of where I come from. The Christmas book, The Littlest Angel, was written a long time ago. It's been rewritten many, many times. I don't know if y'all know that. It's a gorgeous story. They've made a animated movie from it. And you couldn't have a more tearjerker but beautiful story than The Littlest Angel. So yeah, there's lots of books that have touched my heart and soul, and maybe I don't recall them when I'm writing, but somewhere along the line, I'm sure subconsciously it's inspiring me.
Wow,
I think
awesome.
that's important too. It's no matter what genre you write in, there are those books that came before that inspire you, that teach you how to write in that specific genre. For Chuck growing up with horror, it was Stephen King. For me, it was Dean Koontz. It was those writers that really helped us to find your voice. And I think that's so important. You're never gonna just write in a vacuum that, oh, I've never read a children's book, but I'm gonna write children's books now. Mm-hmm. There has to be that inspiration. There has to be that and you take it from anything, not just those books. I mean, me and Chuck both grew up on the 007 books. We both grew up on the Hardy Boys. I mean, all of these things that as kids that we grew up on, and they're still inspiring us. They're still things that they have the Hardy Boys, the TV show now, and as I'm watching it with my wife, I'm like, oh, that's from
you recall.
I can remember the cover of that book. I remember this idea is from that, and it's just so funny. So all of that inspiration, I think is great. At what point for you, for both of you, did you go from, okay, I'm gonna I want to just write children's stuff, and then it was that point where did you realize, I found my voice, I found my way of throwing all of this in the blender and making it an original idea for me, instead of just any of the books you've just mentioned, you were writing, homages to those books instead of writing what you really felt. Did you ever have that, light bulb moment?
Did you want to take it, Jane?
No, you go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to say yes. There are a lot of books out about peace and kindness, etc. And I have two that deal with that theme. And one book is called A Song of Peace. And I really said, gosh, we really need to figure out how we can calm the world down, after living in the Middle East for so long and helping out with a lot of humanitarian work. My eyes were opened up a lot and I learned so much. And when I came back home, I thought, I sat down and I looked and went to the library and to bookstores and just read a lot of different things that were out there. And I thought, a lot of them, they're very, very similar. And I thought, how can I do the same thing but make it different? And so I came up with the Song of Peace. And like Jane was saying, I totally believe that children's books are for adults as well. And I write books that are multi-level. And I've improved over the years for sure, and finding my voice even stronger. But I would say A Song of Peace, it's a totally different level, and it could actually be a movement if I worked really hard at it. So does that answer your question?
Something that's going to be a movement.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have a commercial, and I went and asked several of my friends that speak Chinese or Filipino, different languages. And so I said, just do like 50 seconds, and I don't know how much I'll use, but and just say the word or sing the word peace, 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 or peace, peace. I sing, obviously, because I've been on stage and stuff. And so they did that. And so the commercial really shows all the different languages coming together, which is in the book as well. And I just would really love to see people all over the world stop for a moment and sing peace, because I believe if we could get that out to the universe, that the majority of people on earth, they just want to be able to feed their babies, have their tummy full, have a roof over their head. And, I'd like to throw all the government leaders, I hope I can say this, into a mud bath and let them fight it out and let the rest of us live happily ever after.
Hallelujah.
So, anyway, that's my take on it.
Let's see what kind of take you have now, Jane. I mean, you got to top that.
I don't think no. But I don't think there was a point of inspiration. I live inside the stories, and maybe it's a little different when you're focused on novels, but I go to sleep thinking about what my characters are doing. I wake up and I can't wait to turn the computer on, and it's their lives. So yeah, no, I just can't top that.
I mean, it's okay, but I know what you mean about the characters coming to life. I think that really happens a lot more in writing for older people. But I do remember once my husband came home, and I was sitting up in bed and I was writing, and he looked at me, and he had come home late from work, and he goes, "Why are you smiling like that?" And I'm like, who are you talking to? And of course, I'm not talking to anyone. And I looked up at him and I went, oh, I just gave my grandma her first kiss.
Oh, boy.
Well, I don't think I'm as nice as you. I'm more of I just put my character up a tree and set fire to it kind of person. Well, you have to have some tension, right? So that's just a metaphor for let's give them some trouble along the way. And that's the hardest thing to do, because you love your characters.
Yeah,
but you got to hurt them.
Yeah, you do.
All right, Chuck, you got a last question before we wrap this up?
I don't think it's a question as much as a comment in that out of all the roundtables that we've done, I feel like I've gotten the most out of this one, because talking about, writing for smaller people or younger people, has kind of inspired me. Like, I feel like, well, maybe I should be looking at this, and not from like a standpoint of capitalizing on something, but thinking in terms of the stories that I have going on now with like the Westerns and stuff. Why couldn't I write, some kind of Western story for a youngster?
I will pitch the kidlit market. They're cuddly. This is the most supportive community in the world. I joined Scooby when I was still living in Europe and didn't even know what they were, but I just thought, oh, how am I going to meet writers who speak English? And I tell you what, it's just this morning, I sent a manuscript to an Austrian writer, another one to, I can't remember where, but they go all over the globe. People look after you, they help you out. And there are so many really cool horrors. I don't know about Westerns. I haven't read a kid's Western yet, but yeah, do the horrors. Kurt Kirchmeier writes a great horror.
Do the horror without the horror community.
Westerns because I love the Westerns. I love them so much. And there is a need for young children to have Westerns. And remember that when you write multi-level, whatever your theme is, the kids are going to read it one way because they haven't had the experience to understand. But the parents are going to go, oh my gosh, I think they're talking to me, and that's pretty cool when you can do that.
The Flintstones.
Yeah, the Flintstones, perfect example. But this is how much I love Westerns. I love Westerns today, but I still go onto YouTube and I'll watch Rawhide and Wagon Train.
I was watching Gunsmoke today.
Yeah, there you go, Gunsmoke. I mean, they're fabulous.
Yeah. No, I think it was great listening to each of you, getting the flavor for what you bring, to the readers in your process and everything. And I found it really inspirational. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for inviting us. This is awesome.
Yeah,
so
thank you for inviting us.
Where can people find you out there?
Jane?
Well, this is me, backwards on the screen, How to Be a Goldfish. It is in Canada, but there's some reseller on Amazon in the States who's offering it. So you can get it on Amazon.
And it's a wonderful book, by the way. It really is. And what a great title. And you can find me on my website, diannfloydboehm.com, Boehm, because it sounds like BAME, but it's Boehm.com, diannfloydboehm.com. And you can sign up for my newsletter and find out where all my books are. And I absolutely love helping people. I don't charge. So if you have something deep in your heart you want to get out, please just email me and I'll hopefully inspire you to help you make it happen.
Chuck's going to send you a message about his wife.
Wow.
Thank you very much for coming on. Chuck, run us out with our ad.
Yes. Don't forget to go to reapersbrew.com. Make sure that you use the coupon code MANDO, MENDO, at checkout and get 10% off of new orders, plus receive a free gift. They should have coffee soon, but until they do, they've got the great mugs, the t-shirts, COVID masks, whatever you want, they got it. So it's a veteran-owned company and very sweet people who have supported our show for a long time. So check them out, and thank you very much, reapersbrew.com. And thank you very much, Diann and Jane.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Thanks. It's great to meet you.